when the Charlotte joined, the Reformed Jews, there's certain. I went to their Passover service just to see what it was like. And they do the same stuff that everyone else did, but they just don't say God. And I can't understand it. I mean, why do they go through the ceremonies and all the words, leaving God out? And that's their religion.
Tradition. Yeah, I mean, even we here have our traditions. You get a group of people together and traditions emerge. It's just one of the things that human beings do.
It's strange.
No, it's what we do. It's really what we do.
It brings people together.
If religion is something that binds us, by definition.
One second, I'll bring you the mic. I'll bring it up.
I appreciate what you say about different forms of God and the notion being useful as an expression. And of course, so much of our society has been defined that way. But still, in my own interpretation of the world around me, I don't find it a useful metaphor. I don't find it a useful word. And I think it's very possible to go through life without the need for God. And I think I just find it a distracting and misdirecting detour as in understanding the world. So there was a time I thought that perhaps we could use the word God in our community to describe our own form of spirituality, just sort of redefine it in our way. It's like in the old days, in the real old days, when every village, every town had its own deity. And, a traveler would come into the town and say, well, who do you pray to in this town? They'd say, well, we pray to a god, the god of the mountain over there. And okay, when in Rome, do as the Romans. Over there, this may be our God in a sense, as we define it. But the more I thought of it, I just find it just not a useful word, not a useful topic. I just think that our form, or my form of spirituality and understanding the greater machination of the universe, or the great system that we are a part of, just doesn't require that kind of personification. It doesn't require giving, a personality to it. So I don't know if it's a useful direction.
Well, I have no disagreement with the idea that God does not need to have a personality or a personification. But you can't uncreate God. You could go home and take out your dictionary and tear out that page. But it's really too late. God is out there. Whether you choose to find some set of things that you can attach to that word that are useful to you, that's a personal choice. I've wrestled with it all my life in much the same way you have. And I finally said, since you can't uncreate God, that what I want to do is I want to create God in a way that I find useful. And I'm going to stop fighting the battle of the word. Okay, God exists. God is out there. God impacts our lives enormously. So if they can have their God, I'm going to have mine. And I'm going to have mine the way I want it.
Yeah.
Speaking to what Dusty mentioned before, I find comfort in religion because religion is something that binds us. It does not necessarily have to be theistic or non-theistic. It's by definition, it is something that binds us together. So I find no problem in calling ethical culture a religion because we are bound by certain traditions, by a common belief, certain principles that we follow. I find comfort in being a Jew because I am the product of all these people from generation after generation after generation who evolved and are now in America of today and accommodated themselves. And I was brought up a Reformed Jew, but I do not find comfort in their view of a God. So like last night when we went to pay respects in a home where the father had died, and they did go into the service, I had no problem being there for that service, which gave them comfort in their condition, even though I did not participate. So we, in our home, participate in certain traditions that are not godlike, but are part of who we are and where we came from. If our Passover is no more than being together with our family, our very multicultural family, and remembering, yes, this did occur, not on a biblical, and not on the stages of a biblical or a Cecil B. DeMille epic, it did occur, and it is part of history to some extent, and there is some ethical teachings we can learn from this event. And traditionally, there is something that binds us together to have it. It probably won't occur after we're gone, because we've become such a polyglot family, but while we're here, it will occur.
But this actually leads to another topic that could probably be another platform, but I'll at least touch on it. If you get more than a handful of people together, traditions will emerge. And so we have our traditions here. Religions have their traditions. Families have their traditions. Human beings are a very tribal species. We form into groups quite easily, and quite easily identify ourselves with that group or those groups of which we're a member. The trick is, or the challenge is, to begin to broaden the definition of the group and who can belong to the group, so as to avoid what almost seems to be inevitable tensions between groups. You know, those of us who don't participate in certain struggles find it almost inconceivable that they could exist. The Protestants and the Catholics in Northern Ireland, some of the tribal wars in Africa. From my position, very far removed from either one, I go, but you're all the same. How could this be going on? And the answer to that is that we form groups easily, we form traditions easily, and those traditions and those groups are important to us. Hold on a second. Go ahead. Or Beverly.
Fundamentalists who teach creative intelligence or
Intelligent design.
What do you call it?
Intelligent design
or creationism, rather than accepting evolution. I think they hobble the young people. They protect them from seeing evolution is so exciting and such an amazing thing, and by not letting them be aware of that, they really deprive these young people, who I assume maybe when they get to college they get exposed to it, but they have to throw off, they probably deal with guilt when looking at evolution, and I think that's a terrible thing to do with young people, and it affects our whole country, and science is not thriving in this country right now.
Well, certainly our current policies have been informed by people who have more fundamentalist beliefs. However, I don't necessarily think that your pessimism is quite that justified. There are absolutely people who are being taught things which will make life difficult for them and difficult for us. But all around the world, there are instances of people being taught to hate instead of love. And the challenge is always going to be for us to broaden the groups, to broaden what we can tolerate, what we can live with, and to be more inclusive. And it's hard to do sometimes because there really are some horrible things being taught. Nevertheless, we must strive whenever possible to include those voices in any way we can, because they're not going away.
I want to thank you for this talk and the rest of you for the discussion. I thought it was really very good. And I think you talked to satisfy you. And I just want to say that. Thanks a lot.
I appreciate it. As I said in the beginning, I really thought there was a little too much me in the talk. I was actually wanting to do something about that, but thank you. Take my Bible.
Oh, okay. No something. It is now time for announcements and contributions.